So thank you. I'm just going to really be short about this. But for the last couple of days, we've been having another conference, which has been looking at the nexus of water, energy, and food. And there's a lot of things that have been going through my mind. I've been hoping to have a day that I can really put them together. But one word that came up very clearly for me was trust. And why did it come up? When we're looking at these various developments, and I asked myself, so why would Africa not want to enjoy the development that the West has had? We're listening to all these different aspects of how we need to make change. But there is that thinking that, and it's a programming we've had since independence, that we need to develop like the West. And now we're being asked to shift. And to shift that thinking that we want development like the West, we want fast trains, we want all those things, we want them just as much. But there's an implication in terms of water, energy, and food. That is going to be that's going to be a real attitude change that is going to need to be there. There is poverty, yes, but there is also the thinking that we want to be developed, and that is going to be a real challenge to shift that and go backwards, because people will say, well, why weren't we given the same opportunity? Now that we have oil, now that we have coal, we have an opportunity to be developed. So that is going to be quite a challenge we're going to have. The other thing is, when we've had sustainable, or shall I say, when we've had projects or initiatives or interventions, various projects that have come from multilateral, bilateral, in most cases, the projects are wonderful during the time period. But at the point when the time finishes, the sustainability of those initiatives break down. And that is a very critical point which is never really dealt with. So again, I'm talking about trust. How do we deal with that continuity at the time that an initiative or a project finishes? How do we, that is a point of sustainability that is a major concern. And you find whether we work with our governments or we work with communities, that is where there's no trust. And they don't believe you're going to actually achieve anything. It's going to be, oh, they've come again. We'll go through this, and when it's finished, yeah, we know. We'll get back to life, and life continues as normal. The other aspect I wanted to mention was, because of the educational changes, there are also great opportunities. Just to give you an example, Technical University of Kenya, we just became a university January this year, even though we have been existent as an institution of some kind since 1961. We've moved from a polytechnic to a university college to a university in a 5-year period. But it has its opportunities, because here we are to guide a whole lot of technical training institutions. They are seeing us as mentors. We don't have a template. The government hasn't given us a template. So on one hand, that's a challenge. On the other hand, that gives us an opportunity to decide how we can move about things. And so these projects which we're having, like Energise and all, can begin to feed into some of these gaps which we're having in terms of our templates. And then the final thing I just wanted to mention, and I guess I'm talking now as a designer, is the creative side. How can we use creative industries in terms of storytelling, the arts, text, images, which go along with exhibits, which actually help with attitude change, which give new images that give imagination, visualization. I think that's an area, and communication, that's an area that has to develop side by side with all these other technological innovations, because that's what enables people to see what is possible and gives hope. So I think that's an area that we really need to consider. But I do have a question I would like to ask very briefly. My understanding in the energy development, you talked about the energy development footprint, a blueprint in Africa. From my understanding, it's not just for Africa, it has possibilities for providing world energy needs. That is my understanding. One is, when will this blueprint be disseminated? Why am I asking this question? At the moment, you have just mentioned about phasing out coal, and at the moment, East Africa, Kenya, is facing coal exploitation by China right now. So we've talked about this blueprint, but right now, where I come from, it's under and in fact, it was supposed to have, the project was supposed to have started this year. For some reason, political reasons, it has been it's on a pause, but we're dealing with these things right now. The other question I have is, to what extent and how do you see African universities participating in this blueprint and its process? Those are the two questions I'd like to ask. Thank you very much. Thank you, Suki.
Thank you very much for wonderful statements. First, on development per se, I think my starting point and the starting point of the recommendations of this network, SDSN, is that countries have the right to develop, and they have the expectation of development. But the development of all countries has to go in a manner that is sustainable. And so this isn't to say to anybody, this is the end of development, but rather to say that all countries have to make changes in the direction. You're completely accurate in the perception of development up until now, that you basically follow the lead of countries just in front. They did this, we'll do this, we're a little bit behind, but we're catching up. And now I think the hard part is that all countries need to change strategy, because it doesn't add up anymore that we follow that same long principle. But it's the high-income countries that have to change at least as much or even more proportionately. For example, right now the world is emitting 36 billion tons of carbon dioxide. And since there are 7 billion people on the planet, that's about 5 tons per person. The United States is emitting 17 tons per person. Kenya, I would guess, less than 1 ton. I'd have to check, but I would be pretty sure it would be less than 1 ton per person. We need to move by 2050 to, say, no more than 18 tons, gigatons globally. With a 9 billion population, that would be 2 tons per person. So this would mean that Kenya would rise from 1 ton to 2 tons, and the United States would decline roughly from 17 tons to 2 tons, or be on that trajectory. So you see who's got the hardest work to do. Also, Kenya has a very nice rift valley with lots of geothermal potential, and you're going to have lots of different options. Also with solar and some wind on the coast, and also with the hydrocarbons to make a mix. So I think that the job is going to be for everybody, but it is absolutely true that it's not simply creating the system that one had before. And that means that we all have to learn a more creative way to do this. On your observation about sustainability of projects, this is completely correct. And I think there needs to be 2 aspects to this. One is to build in sustainability as one of the goals from the very beginning. And that can be through the business model and also through the political connection with governments. That this is not something being done from the outside, but it's being done locally, if possible, helped from the outside. And so this can make the projects more sustainable. Then on the creativity, this I think is what I was saying, and you said it better. We have to show what the future can look like. It needs to be inspiring. We have to show the possibilities, so we need you to tell us how to do that. This is really, really important. And then finally, on energy for Africa, I don't think these choices can be made without a game plan. And the game plan has to be acceptable. It has to really help to power Africa's development. It has to have a financial and economic logic to it. And these game plans don't exist right now. That's why the decisions are made in a very ad hoc way. And we need to create a strategy. And then what is the role of coal? What is the role of other resources? By the way, some coal is for coking and for steel sector, such as Mozambique's large coal deposits. Other coal is for thermal power, and I believe that thermal coal, I just don't believe it's going to have a big future, except if carbon capture and sequestration becomes a feasible reality. So I wouldn't bet a country's future on thermal coal.
Thank you. There is one question from the floor now, which
Yes.
I think that will lead us to close. Eliana, you can jump in whenever you want.
Thank you, Manuela. Stefano Pizziali from Intervita NGO. A question for Professor Sachs. Which kind of collaboration, cooperation can be established between NGOs, civil societies, and corporate sector, business sector, in the implementation of SDGs? This is a crucial point for the implementation of these new aims for the global sustainability. Thank you.
Absolutely. Everything about this issue is about the multiple stakeholders, corporate, civil society, and government, and finding good models. Of course, each kind of issue and each sector has to develop its own models. In the Millennium Development Goals, a lot of good models have been created for scaling up primary health care, for example. This has been one of the biggest successes. We don't have that yet on sustainable local energy, but we're going to need to develop it. And that's part of Eni's purpose also in promoting this, is to find good models that can work on the ground and that can be scalable. And in general, communities locally have to take some leadership. NGOs can support that. Companies provide technology. And then the business model, the financing, becomes one of the big questions, and it will depend on exactly which type of problem is being addressed. I think Eni sees a future for this off-grid distributed power. Last week I was with a wind power company in New York, Vestas, the big Danish wind power company. They're interested in scaling up wind power in the windy places in Africa. They've identified in Ethiopia and in Senegal 2 starting points, and in Kenya, actually, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Senegal. They're also trying to figure out the right business model for this, because they have efficient turbines that can replace diesel quite effectively and more cleanly, but they need the business model to do it, and that's what they were launching last week is a project like that. So I think that we are definitely in the multi-stakeholder world, and the goals need to direct us to the kinds of problems that need to be addressed and where the priorities lie. And again, we need a game plan that gives an overall picture, so it's not just a mosaic of whatever project comes to mind, but actually something that adds up to a structured, true transformation. This is what the SDGs should help accomplish.
Okay, thank you. And now we come to an end. So we come back home today with the idea in mind that there is an urgent need to act, but we have some direction that are set down. We need an holistic approach, we need multidisciplinarity, we need a new kind of education, creative innovation, and we need trust. Trust between all the stakeholders that somehow has a role within sustainable development. And this gives us some hope, which is always a nice place to start project on. So with this word, I would like to thank again Jeffrey Sachs for his speech and Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei for this opportunity to all of us. Thank you.